My name's Ben Sutherland, and I'm a recovering TV buyer. It was my first job in the industry, was at Mindshare buying TV on behalf of Ford of Britain and Mazda, Jaguar Land Rover. That was longer ago than I care to remember. I've been at Diageo for about a year, and my role at Diageo is a year old. So there's a significant investment within our business in terms of understanding the media marketplace and understanding the digital marketplace. And really that's my job at Diageo, to sort of shine a light from an advertiser's perspective in terms of what's happening within the marketplace and how we need to operate, and how we need to operate in order to make our brands continually relevant within our marketplace. It's a big challenge for us. We have some amazing brands. We're very fortunate in terms of the portfolio that we have to have Guinness and Baileys and Tanqueray and any number of others. And I'm very lucky to work within an industry where our purpose is to celebrate life every day and everywhere. There's not many that can say that and really deliver against it. So I'm incredibly fortunate in terms of the role that I have within Diageo. And really, sort of, I've been asked here today to give an advertiser's perspective in terms of what's happening and how we're thinking about the investment of our money, and where we're feeling that money needs to move and shift in terms of the marketplace as eyeballs move. I was, interested to look at the numbers that Richard was showing up there. I'll try not to use them against their media agency and sort of global media partners, but it's telling a picture. Is TV dead? I mean, arguably the only growth on their traditional TV is in the 65+ market, which is obviously an incredibly important market, probably less so for our brands when a lot of our consumption happens in the on-trade, in terms of bars and clubs and social occasions. So, that is painting an interesting picture in terms of what's happening across different parts of the demographic. And then another area, obviously, live events, live broadcasts, sporting events, again, incredibly important for our business in terms of how we're driving consumption and how we're driving relevance of our brands. Obviously, Guinness is one of our sort of our core brands globally, and the consumption in live events is huge. So anything which is taking eyeballs away from live events is really an interesting and dynamic shift for us, and something that we need to get our heads around. And we need to think differently. And actually, do we then shift our money into more event-based activities, much more focused and hyper-local, and the impact that technology is having on our ability to commercialize events is very interesting in terms of how we might flow that through from pricing, promotions, into our on and off trades, so that we're really leveraging the money that we're spending around live events. So these are interesting stats, and I'm sure you're all bored shitless of interesting stats, but that's mine. However, the corollary of that is that we do, as advertisers, live in a bit of a bubble. Especially that bubble is focused around some key metropolitan areas. And again, you're surrounded by people who are hyper aware of what's going on and how money is shifting between channels. I love this particular stat because it just shines a light on exactly that point. I'm not in the business of giving. So as Global Chief Digital Officer at Diageo, I'm not in the business of giving targets to my marketeers to say this is how much money you should be spending in digital because that's where the eyeballs are going. Absolute nonsense. I'm there to help our brands understand the impact that digital advertising and the shift in consumer behavior into digital is, and the opportunity that it presents to our business. But we massively overstate the importance of it as well. When I look at our marketing effectiveness studies, as Diageo, we're not an insignificant spender. We're not up there with P&G and Unilever globally, but we spend a lot of money. And we're massively underleveraged when it comes to media. The diminishing returns that we see across our brands and across our channels could argue the case that we should be putting more money into traditional TV as much as we should into digital. So by no means is this gradual shift of money a sort of foregone conclusion. If we look within the next 2 to 3 years in terms of what we're forecasting around, around consumption and media consumption, that has to be offset with an understanding of effectiveness. I spend the majority of my time looking at the effectiveness of channels rather than where eyeballs are going. So, the monetization of channels is of light interest to me, not particularly. I'm much more interested in how, providing relevant and contextual messaging is going to drive a behavioural change in people and mean that they're more likely to choose, one of my brands in a portfolio of brands when they go out for a beer. Or when they go out for a gin and tonic. I want them to be thinking about my brands. I want them to be making a positive choice towards them. And I want our brands to be relevant to those people. And that means having a really broad church of media approaches and really understanding the impact that that has. So anyway, I like that chart. Because ultimately, viewability means that, you can get hold of people pretty much anywhere if you really want to. The point is, do they want you to be talking to them, more importantly, I think. In terms of the platform and the opportunities that we have from a technological perspective, it's incredibly powerful. And we have to be incredibly respectful of our consumers. And that, more than anything, is again something which we have as our performance promise as Diageo. The other thing we talk about is we want to be the most trusted and respected, that comes first, and best performing CPG in the world. So not an unlofty ambition, but something we take incredibly seriously. And obviously, our corporate relations guy had a bit of a shit fit when I said I was going to come in here and talk about the future of TV advertising, bearing in mind some of the headlines that have been in the paper over the last 3 weeks. I haven't shown in my presentation. I could get fired, so please don't tell anyone about what I'm talking about. But respect is incredibly important. Our brands are hundreds of years old. When you think about the importance that we hold in terms of being a custodian of the brands that we have as Diageo, it's incredibly important that as advertisers we understand what's happening within our marketplace. And we drive transparency in that discussion. So, because, opportunities are genuinely limitless. And when you think about the technological advancements that are happening in terms of, the size of processing, nanotechnology, our ability to join the dots between demand-driving activity and hyperlocal activity within the on and off trade, these are incredibly powerful tools that we can be using. And if we use them incorrectly, they can be incredibly detrimental to the heritage and the value that we have spent an incredible amount of time, effort, and money building in terms of the brands that we have within our business. So limitless possibilities comes with a few exam questions. So the internet is 20 years old. Diageo is 20 years old this year. In fact, in December, I'm going to an investors' drinks this evening to celebrate the fact that we're 20 years old, coming out of our teenage years. So much like the internet, we have some sort of questions to be answering in terms of our investors. And we've got some questions to answer, and I think the internet has some questions to answer as well in terms of how we're monetizing the impressions. How are we respectfully monetizing the impressions that we're seeing within, because ultimately impressions are impressions, but they're people. We have to absolutely bear that in mind in terms of how we're operating. Another interesting fact, there was an innovation, I think it was in 1992, there was an innovation awards where the Widget went up against the internet. And the Widget won. So the Widget, for those of you who don't know, it's the way in which Guinness have put the head into a can of Guinness. So it's a nitrogen releasing widget, and that's the original use of the word widget, and it beat the internet. So there you go, that's another fun fact for you today. And literally, this is a direct paraphrase of a conversation I had with our CEO, Ivan. I shit you not. And in the interest of diversity, I've changed Ivan into a lady. But genuinely, over the last 3 months, I cannot count how many times I've had exactly this conversation. It's quite scary. I don't know if anyone's seen this guy, but it's very funny. He does sort of, obviously funny in inverted commas if you're in the industry. But, you know, highlighting some really impactful points and stuff that genuinely, as a board in the CPG industry, this is the kind of question that I get. And like, I'm constantly getting questioned about, are we chasing sort of digital impressions? Could we be spending more money on traditional TV? Should we be spending more money in the on-trade? You know, should we be spending more money on pricing and promotion? Should we spend more money on events? So it's sort of like, it's not a foregone conclusion in terms of that shift of money. And these are the big things that, as Global Chief Digital Officer at Diageo, this is exactly what I've set out to try and work with. And we're going to tackle these kinds of things head on. We can't, it's no good. I can't sit in a central role, in a global role at Diageo, and let my marketeers in our markets make decisions which could potentially have like very serious impacts in terms of the value that we have within our brands and the equity that we have within our brands. We have to be incredibly thoughtful about what we're doing. And these are the cows that go into the milk, that produce the milk that goes into Bailey's, basically. And we know exactly where they are. We know exactly what they've eaten. We know exactly what's gone onto the grass that they've eaten. We know exactly the weight of milk that's been produced. We know what happens with it. We know where it goes. And why should our media supply chain be any different to that? And that's the question that I've been asking, much to everyone's chagrin. Because we want to build a trusted marketplace. You know, how can we have, as a business, trust and respect in our performance promise to the markets and not follow that through in probably one of the biggest line items on our P&L? It's just not acceptable. And that's pretty much what we've been sort of trying to deal with in the year that I've been there. And the last 3 weeks has put a massive dent in sort of my credibility within the business, because this is one of the flagship things which I've been pushing forward in the last year. And so I'm not going to let it go. This will be, you know, still incredibly important in terms of how we operate and the ethos within which we're going to operate within the media marketplace. We want curated media owners. We want tools and technologies which are driving transparency. We want access to tools, technologies, and data. I want to own the data. I want to own the technology. And we want a people-led approach. We want to understand that impressions, respectfully, are people. And we have to think about that in terms of the way that we operate. So I have sort of some mandatories in terms of the way that we're operating. You know, I'm setting these standards at a global level. They're going to follow through into local executions. And what this does is absolutely frees up my marketeers to be doing what they should be doing, which is understanding the importance of our brands and how we stay relevant to consumers, not worrying about the technology they're using, not worrying about what's happening with the GDPR, not worrying about, you know, are we being fleeced by, you know, fraudulent ad bots? You know, I don't want them to be worrying about that, because it takes their focus away. And in an industry, CPG is sort of is full of discussions around cost saving and productivity. So everything that I do is about, I ask myself 3 questions whenever I'm doing anything. I ask myself, is it going to sell more booze? Is it going to make our brands more relevant to consumers? And is it going to make my people's lives easier and simpler? And if technology and an approach is not going to do one or all of those 3 things, I'm not interested in it. And I'll be deprioritizing it. So again, every time we're trying to make some prioritization decisions about what we're doing and how we're operating. So these are the things that I put out about sort of 9 months ago in terms of having a global trusted marketplace. And again, I'm kicking myself because we didn't go fast enough and hard enough at it. And so we will be doing that. And I think, you know, another thing to be aware of from my perspective is that emerging technologies, I never really had a consequence to this. That was part of my problem. So there was no consequence to not being part of it. We were quite soft around the edges. And I think what I'm hoping is, certainly in terms of like the data, our understanding of data and the shift of data and how it's working, especially within online video, it's incredibly important for us as an advertiser, clearly. But we want to understand what's happening. We want to understand what's happening with the data, where it's going, what it's what it's doing. And always, like, the pushback on that has been around the respectful use of the information that we're getting. Is that are we contractually obliged to disclose what we're doing with the data? And I'm very happy to be doing that. From a technology perspective, I think blockchain is going to completely blow this up. And I will be using it in order to drive transparency in what we do and how we operate. So my personal feeling is that the most transformational bit of technology that's coming out at the moment is around that. Cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and our ability to have transparency in our supply chain is incredibly important. And you'll see more and more of this, not least because it allows us to understand how potentially fraud and fraudulent products are impacting. That's by far a bigger challenge for us as a business. How products are being ripped off and sold in free trade zones, like over in LATAM and over in China and over in India. If I can shine a light into those kinds of things, then I'll be doing an incredibly powerful job within our business. But similarly, the same could be said within the opaque sort of media marketplace as well. So, how are we using these technologies to ensure that we've got some level of transparency in what's happening and how we're operating is going to be really important. Because I always try and have a Star Trek homage within my presentations as well. But again, my job is to unlock possibilities within our business. It's to take complexity out. It's to increase levels of confidence within our marketing community, to invest money where they believe it is in the right place. And if that is shifting towards online video eyeballs, then I'm very happy to support it as long as we're doing it respectfully. That's it from me. You've got.
Thank you, Ben. Does anyone have any questions for Ben? I think we have time maybe for one.
I hope there's some shitty questions.
If not, I'll ask you a question. Oh, we have one? Yes? Wait for the mic, please.
Thank you. Hi, it's Tom from Dativa. There was a lot of discussion yesterday about people saying that digital was only really good for a short-term return, and that TV is what you need if you're going to get the long-term return.
Yeah.
I just wondered, as a digital guy, is that something that you feel, or do you feel that when you're investing in digital, you're looking for a long-term return as well as a short-term?
Yeah, I mean, we don't. The way that we do M&E, we split down to short-term impact, which is within year, long-term impact, which is a 3-year return on investment cycle. We've got a pretty advanced and clear way of understanding that, and digital impacts both. It depends on the type of channel within digital that we're operating within. My job is to make sure that we've got enough consolidated weight of spend in particular channels so that within my market mix modeling I can pick up particular causal effects, which we're doing increasingly well as a global organization. So I think CPG especially, without the confidence of a direct sell online, it becomes very difficult to cost justify, a sort of over-egged shift of money from traditional channels into digital. So everything we're doing has to be supported by M&E. Every decision that we make within the business is supported by data, which is saying that that's going to have a mix of short and long-term effects. What we particularly like is the ability to have levers dependent on the challenges that we're facing as a business and within the P&L to say, if I want more short-term investment, I'll dial up here, here, and here. If I want more long-term portfolio play, then I'll shift money into different areas. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Any other questions? Yeah, Jeff.
It's Jeff from Sky.
Hey, Jeff.
So you quite rightly put up on there that you would quite like the control not to be black and white lists.
Yeah.
Are you therefore saying that you would prefer a more broadcasting approach to the way that digital ads are displayed in front of people?
Yeah, I think, yes. I think I want more step forward in terms of like how serious this point needs to be taken. I think, you know, we, with our global media partners who tend to be more online based in terms of because of the global nature of our ability to leverage platforms, it's been a bit passive. We want more step forward in terms of the serious nature within, you know, and the serious way in which we're taking and talking around brand safety, you know, ad fraud, and all of the other issues that we're talking about within a trusted marketplace. So absolutely, I think the onus has to be on, you know, shifting more towards a platform. And culturally, I think, you know, it's my point around the graduation piece. It's about a sort of maturation of certain businesses, and it's about how they operate and the seriousness within which they sort of build those safety mechanics into their platforms. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Congratulations on turning 20. I
think, thank you.
We all, when we think of our teenage years, we try to forget maybe some of the things that we've done. Is there anything that you wish you hadn't done in those first 19 from a media strategy?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've made some shocking decisions, but you know, I think with the benefit of hindsight, that's easy to say. No, I think the biggest thing that I think we've got to tackle as a PLC is our appetite for risk. It's the biggest thing which we have to get over. So, you know, I think we can't afford to not take bets because of concerns about risk. So that's the biggest thing for us.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.